Hello, everyone, and welcome to SPE Live. I'm Jason Notoras. SPE Live is brought to you in part by the SPE Foundation. I'm really excited for this episode today, as well as the audience participation. So if there's someone that has an interest in remote communications that you know, please tag them in the comments of this post, as well as go ahead and share the post to them. You can just click on the ... or if you're on YouTube, get the link, send them an email, send them a message. Let's get everyone on here engaging and enjoying. Today, we are discussing remote communications. A lot of this kind of stems off what the pandemic has brought to us, and then also addressing the topic beyond. So some of the talking points today will be remote communications as part of the digital transformation in upstream oil and gas, operational efficiencies gained with digital tools, the potential CO2 emission reduction that comes alongside remote collaboration, as well as case studies and best practices. Joining me today, let me go ahead and pull up his graphic right here, is Marc. He's the co-founder and the CEO of ViiBE Communication. ViiBE is a video assistance technology that comes without the download, dedicated to technical maintenance centers. And throughout all of this, the company has helped one French oil and gas industry leader already successfully deploy this technology in web app in OpenSea. So ViiBE is incubated by HEC and Zendesk at Station F in Paris and recently raised 1.2 million euros. So congrats to that. Prempain holds an MBA in international business. You can find his profile on LinkedIn, or we could just say hello to him in person right now. Marc, thank you so much for joining us here on SPE Live. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you very much, Jason. I really appreciate it. I'm really happy to be here among you guys.
Thank you. So just a brief introduction, if you will, to the actual term that we're talking about today. Could you just mention what remote communication means to you?
Mm-hmm. So remote communications, it's a broad subject.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's about communicating using electronic devices. We can talk about basic communication, such as VoIP, so basically audio over internet. But today, I would like to focus a bit more on a brand new technology, which is 5-year-old, which is called WebRTC. RTC for real-time communication. And this is a technology, the heart of the technology of ViiBE. So the entire platform is based on that technology. And it allows users, collaborators potentially, to collaborate from one browser to another one without download. So basically, you can establish a data, audio, and video stream from one browser to another one in order to better optimize, facilitate remote assistance and remote communications.
Wonderful. So again, just reminding anyone who's just joining this conversation, if you know anyone who would be interested in this, please tag them in the comments, share this link with them so they can be engaged. We're going to actually get to audience questions here in just a moment. But first, before we get into that, Marc, if you could just kind of outline the oil and gas fit within this topic. Where does remote communications currently sit in the value chain, and where do you think it should be?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So before responding to that question, I would like to bring a bit of context. So as everyone knows, there is accelerating social environmental pressure which urge governments to impose national regulations in order to limit gas emissions. And at the same time, we saw a third price collapse in 12 years. So we've been facing challenges that really urge companies in the industry to accelerate their digital transformation. And actually, with COVID-19, COVID-19 has served as a catalyst for digital transformation. And I would say that remote communication is now mandatory. It has become a necessity for these companies in the industry to sustain, and I would even say to survive in the industry. And to get back to your question, so where does it sit in the value chain? Well, petroleum operation cannot go 100% remote, but a hybrid model is definitely possible and feasible. And I would say that remote communication can be part of the entire process. It can enhance and optimize the entire process. We can talk about a few use cases, such as remote inspections, remote troubleshooting, remote quality control processes, for example, or even leadership visits, just to name a few. So about leadership visits, as I just said, for example, so now executives from super majors or even more overall oil and gas companies, you cannot engage displacement on site. So how do? You need to have workers better equipped with these new technologies, remote communication technologies, so that you can keep up, follow up on what's going on site in terms of health, HLE, making sure that health, safety, and all those conditions are well respected. So you actually use these tools to make sure that everyone keeps up and everyone respects the basic rules on site.
Yeah, and you actually even mention risk, both economic and workforce, in an ebook that you guys have. I want to make sure that I get this quote right, so I'm going to look down at my monitor really quickly. But one of the experts that you interviewed said, quote, companies always want to be the second to adopt new technologies. And I really like that quote. So can you talk about the technologies that have the potential to disrupt the way that the industry is conducting business?
Absolutely. So for the ebook, we've made lots of market surveys, and there is one particular one that we like that is quite interesting. It's from EY 2019, and it says that 89% of oil and gas executives foresee an increase in their investment in digital tools. And I have the figures here. So, there is an increase of more than 38% for big data and analytics. You have an increase over the 2 next years, plus 20% for collaboration tools, plus 30% for the cloud, and then as well as robotics and drones, which are a major area of investment. But to be a bit more concrete on those aspects and how technology can really help out operations, I would like to take this example with Equinor. Equinor has a Valiman, it's an offshore platform, and they have put in place a digital twin. And digital twin technology allows you to duplicate physical equipment or real-world processes in a virtual environment. So it's really interesting, and that allows companies to bring more accuracy of work and to anticipate the actions that they will lead on site. They can conduct them virtually to enhance safety and productivity. And then you can reproduce them in the real world. And to give you a bit more visibility also on what we are working on at ViiBE, we are co-constructing a roadmap with Dassault Systèmes, which is one of the leaders in digital twin. And as I will present later on, if you give me the opportunity, ViiBE is a modular platform. So you have the collaboration area, you have the video, and so on and so forth. And we have an open API, so you can embed new APIs. And what we do think of is to implement a digital twin within our platform so that you can iterate in a virtual world. And as soon as it's validated, then you can tell the worker that is on site to apply the exact same gesture, but in the real world.
Thank you for sharing all that. I want to encourage the audience too at this point to please begin sending in your questions. I'm going to go ahead and throw that banner up too, just so that everyone knows that it is question time. In the meantime, while the questions are starting to come in for you, Marc, if you could just tell us where people could find your ebook or a little bit more about what went into it.
Yes, of course. So our ebook is titled Remote Assistance and How It Boosts Petroleum Operations. So a quarter ago, we really wanted to tackle the following challenge: the future of web technologies within command excellence expertise centers in the oil and gas industry. So we conducted lots of interviews with experts, influencers in this industry. And so now the ebook is almost live. It's not completely published on our website, but it includes quotes and insights and the vision shared by these people. And I will post the link later on in the comments so that you guys can access it. And we can send you the first version before it goes public.
That would be great so much. And we'll even throw the link in the description of this live stream and on demand so that people know where they can access it as well. All right, so we do have a couple questions coming in. While we're going to go ahead and look at those, I do want to talk about the fact that remote work right now is increasing, and maybe differentiating the idea between the automated aspect of remote work versus what you're discussing, which is the remote communications. You still actually need someone around to do something. But compared to other industries, in your observations, what do you think the current state of oil and gas is when it comes to remote communications?
So I would say that the industry has been evangelized for the past 5 years, but it's still confronted with the most constraining environment, I would say, definitely. We got the opportunity to work in other industries at ViiBE, such as automotive, transportation, but definitely oil and gas, and more globally, energy industry is confronted with the most constraining environment. Just to name a few, you have ATEX requirements, but I would say that one of the biggest challenge in the industry is connectivity. This is the biggest challenge that this industry faces. But now we have more and more opportunities. So, for example, in order to, I will focus now on there is microwave, there is different technology that you can use in order to optimize your connections. But I will focus on satellite, which is one of the most promising one, I would say, and also the most useful one when it comes to deep offshore. So you have three different categories in terms of satellites: low Earth orbit, you have middle or geostationary orbits, Earth orbits. Well, what we've done with ViiBE is even though geostationary, the problem with that is that it will bring lots of latency because of the high altitude. So it's becoming more and more complicated with this type of connection to establish a clear communication. So we really took these factors into consideration at ViiBE and try to develop the platform accordingly. So to give you a bit of visibility on how it works, if you have a geostationary connection, which is less expensive, you will still be able to use our platform. How? It's simple. Well, it will not be sequenced, and we have an adaptive stream, making sure that regardless the connection, you will still be able to capture lots of pictures. We made sure to dissociate the pictures from the video stream so that in these circumstances, you can keep on working from a distance. Even though the quality of the video is pixelated, you capture pictures and they will be sent to the expert with HD quality. Otherwise, if you are one of the super majors, you have more investments, you can benefit from low Earth orbit. And in this sense, the experience, it's a bit smoother. You have a better experience in terms of video. And of course, it helps a lot, I would say.
And Marc, we're starting to get a few questions in from the audience that I think kind of ties into what you were just saying. Robert Mueller just commented in from LinkedIn. He says, my team was considering using some sort of remote communication solution. What's the difference between using a solution like ViiBE, which you said needs no download, versus other tools, which are actual apps on your phone and computer? I think you kind of discussed that a little bit, but if you could further describe that for Robert.
Absolutely. I think it's first of all, it's much lighter. You don't need to sensitize the potential users. What I mean is, on a daily basis, in the industry, we know that there are lots of competition. You have competitors cooperating with one another. You just need to send someone an email with a link. That person clicks on this link and get connected right away. So that makes things much smoother. And in this industry, we know that IT restrictions are quite strict. So when it turns to downloading an app, first you need bandwidth. It can be time consuming, and also you need to overcome those IT restrictions. When it turns to emergency downtime, you cannot allow yourself to be confronted with these factors. So bringing the technology in a simple manner and much more accessible, I would say that it makes the biggest difference.
And for those who are adopting new technologies, Stephen Barrow actually had a comment along those lines, basically asking about the quote that I had read that you mentioned, it comes in your ebook, that most companies do want to be the second adopter of new tech. How have you helped companies overcome their reluctance to adopt your technology? Or maybe any other examples that you've seen from other startups?
Mm-hmm. So that's a question from the audience as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay. That's a really good one. Actually, when it comes to startups and deploying a new technology, a disruptive one, I think you need to be problem-oriented. That's the first thing. The technology that you develop must come from the trades. It needs to come from the daily operations. So at ViiBE, so our history comes from public emergencies. We've developed the platform in order to optimize public emergencies. And then we reckon that the platform that we've developed could bring lots of value in the oil and gas. And we focused on how it goes on the field in order to identify the problems and develop the platform accordingly. So we go back and forth between our tech team, UX team, and the users to make sure that we solve a problem. We are not feature focused, we are problem oriented, and we are actually passionate about the problem we try to solve. And then once it's done, it's about customer success management. And I think here at ViiBE, we have a really good one. And we spend lots of time onboarding our users. We are here to answer questions. And this is how it leads to adoption, over time.
And I'm hearing a lot of this discussion too about where it can play into the energy sector, which I do want to get into the nuts and bolts of that a little bit later in the conversation. But first, if I browse your website, I noticed that you have identified a section specific to energy. And I'm not saying this as a ViiBE promotion in any way. I'm just curious why you want to spend extra focus and attention to oil and gas and energy.
Mm-hmm. So as I just said, my co-founder and I developed ViiBE in order to optimize public emergencies. So we were really focused on bringing value. But also the paradigm that we were confronted with was how to make sure that we can invite an external point. Who is an external point? In this situation, it's that person confronted with a vital emergency. And actually, it turned out that this technology that we've developed was really relevant for competition in the industry and all the partnerships that go on. As I described, you can easily reach out to someone else, one of your subcontractors, contractors, partners, with a single click. And it really makes sense. So in terms of value to bring, reducing displacement, making sure that they better collaborate from a distance, it really makes sense when it turns to open sea and expertise onshore. So we really pinpoint that value that we could bring. And then from a technical perspective, the fit was quite obvious. So, and we decided to fully focus ourselves on this area in this industry.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good examples. You could have the almost like a virtual inspection, if you will. There's a good opportunity to reduce risk by the number of people that you're actually putting on some of these offshore platforms. I know you spoke specifically of offshore. Are there any case studies or examples that you can share with companies that you've had success implementing remote communication technologies with?
Yes, absolutely. I think the first one of our historical partners is Total. We deployed for the first time our platform with them back in 2017. And it was in the UK and then in the Netherlands. And the challenge was to establish the first streams between the onshore expertise center and the engineers dispatched offshore in open sea. So it's now, it has been 4 years that we've been deployed. And after a few streams, as soon as you really enter into the habits, we managed to identify displacement reductions, and it brings lots of value. Helicopters displacement were reduced. And then, working on white space analysis, so trying to identify where that technology could bring also value, we identify remote inspections, making sure that there is less and less inspectors on site and that you can actually provide visibility to your customers using such platform, for example.
I have a couple more audience questions coming in, and I do want to thank you, Marc, just for being so transparent with some of your answers too. I appreciate you going ahead and sharing some of this with us. Sarah wanted to know whether or not you make remote inspections for the oil and gas.
Yes, absolutely. This is definitely one of the activities that require nowadays remote communication technologies. So you have companies that are actually specifically working on these activities. And so how can you conduct remote inspections if you cannot send people on site? That's just impossible. So that's the reason that I've said previously as an introduction that COVID-19 served as a catalyst for digital transformation. This is now a necessity. So I would say that remote inspections are the use cases that developed the most during the crisis for the oil and gas industry. And this is what we witnessed at ViiBE.
Yeah, and I think that we could spend a whole other half hour just talking about how demand has changed because of COVID-19.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, and because of that, how much remote communication is actually vital in some of the cost-saving efforts that some companies are needing to make. Asif wanted to know where the platform is hosted. I think this is a really interesting question, talking about any kind of residency requirements, especially for the NOCs.
Mm-hmm. So where is it hosted? It's actually, so as I said, we are really agnostic when it comes to the device that you want to use with ViiBE. We can establish smartphone to smartphone communication, laptop to smartphone, tablet to tablet. It really depends on your need. It's exactly the same vision we have when it comes to hosting. We can be hosted to any type of cloud provider that I will not name now, but you know them. And we can also be hosted at your servers in your data center. So we are really flexible when it comes to data. We know it's a critical point in the industry, and we worked accordingly, making sure that we can adapt ourselves and ping the servers that you want us to ping, depending on your safety and security policies.
This is back to me asking questions. I know you're not going to be as kind when I ask a question, so I'm letting you know this is coming from me. What about KPIs the company should be looking at? If you don't mind giving your bold answer.
So when it does, so if I may here, so we work on these aspects. The KPIs, of course, this is how you track your performances, the value that you bring. So if I may, I have this. We drew a board for the ebook. So if I may share my screen, I can show you just a simple board.
Yeah, let me go ahead and.
Is it the right time to do so?
I'm not seeing it just yet, but it should just take.
Yeah.
And then I'll have access to it to display. Okay, here we go. I see your full desktop and the document. I'm gonna go ahead and share it right now. Okay.
Okay.
Here we go.
Can you confirm you can see my screen?
Yes. The box 3 up right now.
Okay. So on the left side here, you can recognize all the traditional operation metrics. So I will not expand too much on these, as people are aware of those. But so the new metrics that we track at ViiBE are the following ones. And we do think that nowadays it makes more sense to track them. And this is what we provide at ViiBE. After every single ViiBE session, you have an exit journey when you can say, is the issue fixed? Is the inspection over? Did I manage to establish a diagnosis? Did I avoid a displacement? And then, of course, you have satisfaction indicators and so on. And it will help you track, first contact resolution, for example, which is one of the most important one for us, making sure that in a ViiBE call, you solve the problem right away. That's the objective. Time to resolution, of course, let's try not to spend 2 hours or an entire day solving the issue. So I could also tackle another subject in terms of knowledge management. At ViiBE, we try to capitalize off expertise, expert explanations to make sure that next time we'll make it faster, we'll solve it faster. Technical dispatch, as I said, making sure that we reduce the number of displacements and that everything is solved from a distance. And so on and so forth. So these are the most important one, and you have an entire dashboard that brings visibility, enlighten you about the performances, and it's backed up by the exit journey.
All right, thank you for sharing all that. We're going to go back to some audience questions as well. I'm going to go ahead and take your screen off. There we go. Okay, so let's get over to Anna Carolina. Wanted to know. Hear more about the use of remote communication tools to overcome the difficulties of engaging with stakeholders remotely.
So where is that question?
Here we go. So I like this question because we've talked a lot about how companies could use it amongst themselves, but what about when you need to engage with stakeholders?
Absolutely. So it brings back the topic about external users, co-opetition. You just need to know one thing: email address or phone number of your interlocutor. From the platform, you can use one of these 2 channels in order to send a web link, and right away that person will receive it from one of these channels. Click on the link, no download, no IT restriction barriers. That person will enter the call. So when it turns to, so yeah, thank you for sharing this video. So this is the way it works. You're on your website, just use one of these channels, that person click on the link, and the communication is established. And then from that moment, the expert, the sender, can benefit from an immersive point of view on the environment. And you can also escalate. So if you want to bring more people, more executives, more colleagues, then it's totally possible in real time. Using the add a user button, you can add someone internally, already registered from the company, or you can bring one of your subcontractors, or as the question asked, you can bring someone from the external world.
Thank you for sharing. I do want to go back to the article that you had co-wrote for The Way Ahead, which is a member of the SPE family of digital magazines. And you mentioned social responsibility in the article, which kind of ties into an earlier question about reducing the carbon footprint. Mm-hmm. One item that comes to mind, less helicopter trips, but can you elaborate on why social responsibility is so important for oil and gas?
Mm-hmm. I think this is a sector that has been blamed for a long time, that is, under the radar. So, I think we can definitely capitalize off digital transformation in order to change that mindset that people may have about the industry. And I do think that technology can fill the gap and change those vision. I mean, this is an industry that we do need and that we will need for a long time. So let's try to optimize it, bringing new processes, optimizing them, and yeah, let's try to move forward.
Multitasking a little bit too much on my end, pulling up all these different buttons. Marc, I want to thank you for your time. Before we go, is there anything else that you would like to say, or at least let people know where they can find you?
Thank you very much. That was my pleasure, Jason. Thank you very much for having us on behalf of the entire ViiBE team. Yeah, so we've been working hard at ViiBE to deliver the 4th version of our platform. So ViiBE 4 is coming in a really near future, so you can stay tuned. And in a near future, there is the ebook that is coming in a few days. So I really invite you guys to have a look at this. Even better if you read this, and please don't hesitate to visit our website. We'd be happy to answer all your questions.
Wonderful. And Marc, thank you again so much for joining us. I also want to thank Nazneen Hamad for her help in coordinating this conversation. Excellent work behind the scenes there, and to the audience for your engagement and for the questions that you asked. SPE Live is sponsored by the SPE Foundation, and you can watch this broadcast and other SPE Lives on demand, both on our website and on YouTube. Also, whatever link you're watching this on right now, that becomes the on-demand link. So share it with anyone that you think would have interest in this conversation. I'd also like to just say to all of my Gulf Coast friends, it looks like Tropical Storm Beta was kind to us for the most part. So we do have another SPE Live coming up tomorrow, technology willing, that will be discussing wellbore surveying. So until then, I'm Jason Notoras, and thanks for watching.